and your water fountains. Call to order the Architectural Review Committee meeting. Slower. Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Roll call.
Dr. Brian Burney.
Here.
Jenna Bentley.
Here.
Bethany Frost.
Here.
Jordan Adams.
Here.
Tom Strayer.
2 sets of minutes to approve. Do we need to do them separately, or can we do them?
Yeah, separate motions, please.
I move we approve the June meeting minutes for the Architectural Review Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the special meeting minutes of July 1st, 2025 for the Architectural Review Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Old business?
Yeah, just one item of note, excuse me, before we get started. We would like to flip-flop items 3A and 3B and do 3B first. So that is the Hampton Walk petition for elevations from Fisher Homes. So not sure who's speaking for the petitioner, but come on up.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Mindy Westrick Brown, an attorney with the law firm Faegre Drinker, representing Fisher Homes tonight. Mark Leach was here with you in May, and I'm pleased to report that he had his third baby girl, and so he's still on leave, and so I'm here with you tonight. Also joined by a number of members from the Fisher Homes team, including Amanda Deerdorf, who may be able to step in and answer any of your questions as we walk through this. And we're going to try to make this as easy as possible and try to keep everything straight. So Ryan, thanks for that, and the board for allowing 3B to go first. We thought this was kind of the easiest to walk through the 19 elevations that are added to the previous Hampton Walk PUD. And so we have those available. They do overlap with our request in 3A, and so we thought going through these and getting feedback on what would be approved for Hampton Walk PUD would make the most sense for tonight. So we did have a chance to see the staff report and do acknowledge the requirements that were noted in the staff report. We also are comfortable committing to the decoration hardware on the garage doors. And so I think with that, if the board would like to walk through any of them, we're happy to do that, or answer any questions that you might have about specific elevations.
So you're stipulating that the list of things that apply in the PUD, that you'll meet all of those?
Yes. There's 23 bullet points in the staff report, yes.
So you have those. Okay.
And that encompasses the two called out specifically, the Carrington American Classic with stone. Does not meet architectural standard number 6, which requires that the home with less than 50% brick on the front elevation must include 2 siding colors. Have you talked through that one specifically?
Go ahead.
Sorry. And then same question about the Winston American Classic. Those were 2 specifics.
Yes, correct. So we did it, and so what we we're going to propose is that the American Classic with stone would not be submitted,
Okay.
given that. And then also, same thing with the Winston.
Okay.
I did want to also clarify, Ryan, your question about the 2 foot or greater setback. That is 2 feet on the Carrington. Excuse me. And that all these elevations, that step back, it is 2 feet.
Okay. So they all meet the wall plane?
That is correct. Yeah. So that was a late verification, but we did just get that
Okay.
architecture. It was designed that way so that it would have at least one.
Could you point out on one of the elevations exactly where that would be?
If you go to the, it's right here. It's hard to tell from where the brick line is.
Oh, I see. So where the brick slightly offsets, that is a 2-foot articulation?
That is correct, yep. Yeah,
Thank-
these new
thank you for that.
three plans, again, this is part of the designer series in Hampton Walk that, again, as you all know, we just update plans and floor plans to kind of meet the needs and all the latest and greatest consumer trends. The unique feature with these 3 plans specifically, it is the integrated 3-car garage. So as you can see here, the plans have an option for, they come included as a 2-car, as you see here, but then have an option for a 3rd car there as well. Excuse me.
I like the way that's incorporated into the main ridge beam rather than stuck on the side.
Yeah, it's, again, it's a personal preference. You know, I would say now this will, if the board elects these, we will have a total of 4 of these plans out of what will be approximately 10 plans that we do offer at Hampton Walk. So again, great street variety, as you mentioned. We will have some that kind of something for everyone there. My only other clarification, Ryan, would be, you noted in one of the bullet points, the wrapping the corners 24 inches. And is that still an approved, did we?
So right now, we're going through an amendment process with Helms Mill and Rockport to remove that requirement. These are still in the works. We've talked with Baggy about addressing it on a larger scale. We've not finalized any language
Okay.
about that yet.
So nothing's been determined?
No, and
Okay.
I think it's heading that direction, but as we talked about, I think at one point in time, I struggled with a little bit with what to do with Hampton Walk because, we're 150 homes in here where it might look kind of weird to remove that requirement midstream, whereas the other neighborhoods either haven't started or only have a handful of homes in them.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, just wanted to clarify, because I know there's been a lot of discussion, to your point, that I've been a part of on that, so.
Yep. Go ahead.
Well, I'll quickly add, I think these additional elevations look good. I think the question is, and what we needed is confirmation that you'll meet the outlined, and you've confirmed that. You've confirmed the 2, you'll just withdraw those 2.
Correct.
So where I'm at is, I think we're good moving forward with these and approving these contingent upon the confirmation you gave today. So,
What's the minimum square footage of all of the homes you're submitting, the least square footage? You know which one has the least? Just want to make sure that the least has enough.
Probably the ranch, right?
What's the minimum square footage in this section of Hampton Walk, Ryan?
Say that again, Dr. Bernie?
What's the minimum square footage in this section of Hampton Walk?
I'll have to look that up. I don't know off the top of my head. Give me just 1 second.
I don't either. But I think there is one.
Yeah, there is.
I think it's 1,600.
is 1,800 square feet for a single story, 22 for a two-story.
For Area C. Maple Street.
This is designer, correct? This is area B of Hampton Walk.
Well, this is Area B, so 1,800. So the smallest one, as far as square footage, is or another way, are there any under 1,800 square feet?
No, they would have to meet that square footage minimum to be submitted. That's
Well,
correct.
So if they meet it, that's fine.
Yeah, the minimum, yeah.
So if I make a motion that we approve, contingent upon the things we agreed upon in this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Now it's just become monotony for this.
We're starting. Different.
So this is the Carrington American Classic with brick and the Avery Modern Farmhouse with brick. The house on the left is a newer model that you reviewed this evening. On the right was a previously approved model for Hampton Walk.
I think
Say
different.
Different.
Okay.
I said different.
Jordan said different, so we're good.
This next one is the Carrington American, actually, we can skip this because you're going to pull the American Classic with stone. This one as well. This is the Carrington Modern Retreat with brick on the left, the Carrington Modern Retreat with stone on the right.
Similar.
Similar.
This is the Carrington Pacific Craftsman with brick on the left and with stone on the right.
Similar.
The Emmett Coastal Cottage with brick on the left with stone on the right.
Similar.
Similar.
The Emmett Western Craftsman with brick on the left and with stone on the right.
Similar.
The Winston, oh, we can skip that one. We're pulling the Winston with stone. And the Winston Modern Retreat with brick on the left and with stone on the right.
Similar.
Similar.
So of these, what I heard is the Carrington Modern Retreat with brick and with stone are similar. The Carrington Pacific Craftsman with brick and stone, similar. The Emmett Coastal Cottage with brick and stone, similar. The Emmett Western Craftsman, brick and stone, similar. And the Winston Modern Retreat with brick and stone, similar.
Need a motion.
I move we approve what Holly just said.
Second.
All in
as the
favor?
anti-monotony review results.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Back to 3A.
We're gonna try to break this up into pieces if the board so desires. And so you'll remember back to May, Masterpiece sub-area was reviewed and approved, and then Designer 40 was reviewed and approved with some notations there. The minutes reflect that the porch requirement was waived for Masterpiece. I know there was a lot of discussion and back and forth, and two of the sub-areas were tabled. But going back before we get into the two sub-areas that are before you tonight, we would respectfully request that the porch requirement be amended to allow for covered entries, in addition to porches for the elevations that were already reviewed and approved for Designer 40. So each of those elevations was reviewed at the May meeting and found to be satisfactory to your committee. We did a simple analysis, and I think without this amendment for Designer 40, I think the numbers were we would lose roughly 27 elevations and only be left with 16, which again causes issues with anti-monotony as we're going through that. So I think we may have 3 elevations that don't have, due to architecture, right? It's the style of the home. They have a nice front door, but the style of the home does not offer a covered entry or a front porch that measures at least 24 square feet. So we'd like to address that at tonight's meeting, going back to the motion for Design 40 from last meeting.
I'm not sure I understand how they would be built then. They would have either a covered porch or
they have either a porch that measures 24 square feet, or they have a covered entry.
so the porch would be without a cover if it was 24 square feet.
No, it just would be a less than, the porch would be, for a covered entry, we're saying
So it'd be
that's less than a
It'd be
porch.
a 24 square foot porch with a cover,
Yes,
or
yeah, as we think is implied with the definition of a porch, or a covered entry, which is a smaller area of front porch stoop.
so it would be a stoop with a cover.
Yeah.
And the minimum size on that standing area would be just a step?
We
Like
don't
a-
have a proposal for that, but all of them are part of the elevations that have already been approved. I think the Amelia Modern Prairie is,
Okay. Maybe the beacon.
And maybe a clarification question, since it's not a commitment in the PUD and it's not a formal request, but I think that there was just some discussion, Ryan, around this, and I think your audit from this staff report kind of did the same thing. If you took out, like, the discussion came up around Masterpiece. If we took out this porch requirement, although the elevation looks nice, but doesn't meet this is how many the petitioner would be losing, and I don't want to paraphrase, but I think that we just want to be sure that the elevations as approved by this board are not, the 24 square foot porch discussion isn't a bullet point that we have to quote meet. And that's going to be a theme through tonight, because I think that exercise last time we were in front of the board, where there were many nice elevations that didn't have a porch because of, as Mindy mentioned, various architectural styles. But the board approved the elevation that we wouldn't also be on top of that, then required some way or somehow that the porch is 24 square feet.
Well, I think the issue I was sort of having with it was the curb appeal, if you will. The front elevation of the homes really looks kind of flat without, you know, the porches, which add significant detail with their posts and trim and perhaps railings along paved areas and the offset of the landscaping. It makes the front of the house less flat, if you will.
Sure.
And when we eliminate those, we have to look at, how could I say it, the degree of plainness. Is it like a piece of flat paper, or has it got vertical folds to it so it would stand by itself if you just took the front elevation and
All of
folded
these
in
are.
creases with a piece of paper?
Yeah.
We'll show you an example that.
Well, many of them have examples of porches that don't include 24 square feet. But I think we just want to verify.
Yeah, so you can see this is a covered entry, not a porch, because it wouldn't measure the 24 square foot, but it still has the
Well,
overhang and
Well, the garage, you know, protrudes quite a bit, and there's an articulation on each side of the garage, and there is kind of an eyebrow over the front, which provides some character. So that particular one, I think, is fine.
Could I jump in and maybe try to frame this discussion a bit? So let's back up for a step. So Hampton Walk does not have a front porch requirement in that PUD. Petitioner is presenting that they would like to basically mirror the Hampton Walk PUD. And early on in discussion, staff agreed that was a fine concept to go forward with, but we denoted a few standards which the town, since whatever, 2022 or 23, whenever we did Hampton Walk, has moved in certain directions to do some additional things. And one of those was, since then, we've tried in almost all, if not all PUDs, to require a specific front porch size. And so we approached them about doing that. And then the staff and the petitioner discussing that, it became very apparent that that was going to be an issue on a number of the home series. And so part of the discussion was, it was interesting because the Masterpiece series are all very attractive homes, but many of them don't meet the front porch requirement. Then you also have some of the Maple Street and the other ones that don't meet it as well, but it wasn't just solely what I'll call the more plain, smaller homes that didn't meet the front porch requirement. It was quite a range of them. And so I think that the question before you is simply, are you comfortable moving forward with making a recommendation on this PUD without it having the front porch requirement? Because right now it does not have the front porch requirement in the PUD. If you're comfortable with that, then I think we go through elevations and start talking about specific ones. If your feeling is we just don't want to recommend this PUD without the front porch language, then it's not the vote the petitioner wants tonight, I'm sure, but it gets a lot simpler.
Well, if we could just look at the architecture.
That's great. That's what we.
Yeah, and
propose.
and we're bringing up Designer 40 because it's already been reviewed and approved by this board. So if we could just mirror the Masterpiece motion from last meeting for Designer 40, then we can move on to the other two sub areas. Yeah, and we can move on to the other.
So I wasn't on the committee, I think, when you've decided to move in the direction of the front porch. And so I'm comfortable going through this. I just want you to know where my head's at. And seeing some of these, I think they look nice. I'm not trying to upend what, and questions about what it means for the staff, right? If we're, again, deviating from a standard that's been set recently, but if Hampton Walk was already being built without this front porch requirement, and we just talked about the brick wrap requirement, and because things are underway, if we're going to require the brick wrap and then also require the front porch, even though they didn't have to do the front porch before, that's a little different on consistency. So just where my mind's at, if we're being consistent on the wrap but not on the front porch, then maybe I have questions about that.
Well,
Well, Lane and
not-
Hampton are different PUDs, right?
they're
Yes.
different PUDs. And the wrap we have removed from the Lane Farms
Okay.
PUD.
Okay.
There's a few other changes that are being made too as
Sure.
well. So to be clear, it is not an exact mirror of Hampton
Okay.
Walk, right? So the doors open
So
Yeah.
there's.
To some degree.
It's open for changes because there are changes.
Sure. Okay.
So why don't we look at them and see, like, I think that one's okay. I don't know what others think. It doesn't have the big front porch, but
So the one thing that I don't want to do is have a requirement for a porch that says you have to have a porch except for these elevations.
Mhm.
That is an absolute nightmare and
we need something
administrative.
uniform for you to
Correct.
inspect.
Correct.
That's what I'm gonna
Now, we can go by area. I think that's manageable for staff. If
Yeah.
certain areas have to have a porch, certain areas don't. But to say, hey, we gotta have porches except for these models, it's just, you're creating mistakes that are going to be made for us from an administrative standpoint.
Well, if the models, all look good to us, it's no problem, right?
Yeah, and our first request is all these elevations have been reviewed by you all in May. And so you've gone through them and approved them. And so we're just want the motion to be reflected. And then our ask is also that the two remaining, so that they're consistent. So Masterpiece already has no porch requirement. We'd like Designer 40. We don't think each elevation has to be re-reviewed tonight because it was already reviewed in May. And then we can review the two additional sub-areas tonight.
Well, we can just look how they look with the porches that are on them and see whether we need to change anything.
That's fine.
So we've already approved these elevations, and as reflected, they didn't have the porch requirement. So now, I guess, Dr. Berner, you want to go through each one again individually to make sure, like double check?
Kind of run them by and, see if there's,
For the sub-area that was already approved, or just for the new sub-areas?
for Lane. For what
Yeah,
you're.
yeah, but we were here in May and we did two sub-areas in May. We did Masterpiece and Designer 40, and those elevations were approved. The minutes reflect that Masterpiece has an exemption for the porch requirement. And so it's just kind of a technical clarification on Designer 40 in our opinion, so that we save 27 elevations that have already been approved by
Okay,
this
so-
ARC.
So,
So if they're already approved, why are we looking at them tonight?
because the minutes and the motion was not clear as to whether you were fine with this sub-area not having the porch. You were very clear, Masterpiece series did not have to have the porch requirement. It was a little bit less clear if that also applied to this sub-area.
So after I reviewed these, I am comfortable, because we've set the precedent and said Masterpiece sub-area D does not need to meet the porch requirement. I am comfortable moving forward with sub-area B as well. But I hear Dr. Burney wanting to go through them again. I defer to the rest of the committee. I'm just letting you all know I'm comfortable moving forward without the porch
cover
requirement.
entry as well.
Absolutely.
I said I'm fine with the cover entry as well in lieu of the full porch.
I am too. I'm gonna look
Well, let's
through
just
them
do that
again to
then.
refresh.
So to add clarification to the minutes, I make a motion that we approve the Designer 40 series, which we've already done, and clarify that they don't need to meet the new porch, or the porch requirement.
As well as the Maple Street.
Just, they're talking about sub-area B, correct? Because we've already approved sub-area D, and then we're going to walk through A and C. So that's, my motion is about sub-area B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank
Okay.
you. So now we can move forward. So we have two sub-areas before you. We have Maple Street and Designer. And we'd like to start with Designer.
Sub-area
But I
C.
want to give some kind of opening comments about these sub-areas. So again, we tried our best to, and appreciate both Holly and Ryan over the last 6 weeks since or I guess almost 2 months, I suppose, working with us to get the PUD to get closer to a reflection that mirrors Hampton Walk. That was important to staff, and so we had a number of meetings and back and forth, and we believe that what we're taking to Plan Commission later tonight is a much closer mirror to Hampton Walk. And so with that, Hampton Walk has 4 sub-areas, and they're all very important because it's a village feel. We need to appeal to a lot of different buyers at different price points and create this village feel that has Masterpiece, Maple Street, Designer, and Designer 40, the same as what's already in Hampton Walk. Hampton Walk is selling well. We had a neighborhood meeting in June, and the only person to show up to the neighborhood meeting was the current landowner. And so we also had an amendment to the Hampton Walk PUD in the fall, and so we've not received any negative comments about the product that's in Hampton Walk, and so we're looking to mirror that with Lane Farms. We also heard what was important to the town. So we know the town likes Masterpiece. We're doubling the number of homes of Masterpiece that are offered here. Designer 40 was a hot seller. It's a lifestyle product, not much burden at all on the schools, and so doubled Designer 40 as well. The Maple Street product stays the same in Lane Farms as it did in Hampton Walk, and so just wanted you all to be aware that these product types are really important to creating that village feel as we walk through the elevations of Designer and Maple Street. And also, we are looking, obviously, we're looking for what works for the town, what works for consumers, what they're after, and trying to provide as much elevations that can be approved to avoid any anti-monotony issues. So how we set up this presentation, kind of given that we're trying our best to mirror Hampton Walk PUD, is we set this up, and what we would ask you tonight, if you're so inclined, is to save time and energy on the review of this and do an approval for the elevations that are approved in Hampton Walk, and then go elevation by elevation with a single review of the ones that aren't approved in Hampton Walk, so that you have the ability to look at them and decide whether or not they're appropriate for Lane Farms. And so, again, for sort of continuity, for many reasons, but continuity for consumers, right? If they want a house that's available in Hampton Walk and there's a lot available in Lane Farms, we'd love them to have the home that they're interested in. So if you're so inclined and staff supportive, that's what we'd like to do here. And with that, we can jump to...
Sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? And it goes back to my earlier point, I think. So we had some elevations that were improved for Hampton Walk. You would like us just to approve those previously approved elevations for Lane Farms. However, to Ryan's point, there are a couple of changes in the PUD. So what we wouldn't know is there might be one or a handful of these elevations that might not meet that. And do we have an idea between your presentation of which of those elevations wouldn't meet that?
Yeah, a couple things. So for which I actually think is better in this instance, if you're measuring it that way. So one of the requirements for Hampton Walk was a brick wrap. That was added onto elevations that didn't call for a brick wrap. So Hampton Walk had elevations that were submitted that had all siding, and the requirement was for them to have a brick wrap. Well, it was operationally difficult for Fisher Homes, so instead of submitting elevations that were previously then tacked on an additional requirement, they only submitted first floor brick home elevations in Lane Farms. And so it saves the whole first floor has brick on the first floor instead of having that brick wrap in the Maple Street series.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what Lane Farms has to do with Hampton Walk. They're different PUDs. They may have the same owner, and they may have similar designs, but if it's approved in one subdivision, it doesn't mean it's approved in the other subdivision. I don't get that connection. You're like trying to blur a line here that doesn't, it's a line. It's a different PUD. It has different
yeah.
rules, and there are changes.
Yeah, we understand that point of view. It's,
Well, can we talk about Lane and not Hampton?
Yeah, yes.
The discussion is on Lane. I agree Hampton looks nice. It looks great. It's selling terrific, doing a great job, but this is a different PUD. It happens to have the same owner or developer.
Yeah, and our response to that is it could have been the same PUD because it's you know, it has the same monument sign. It's going to be market.
It's not the same. It's
gonna
different.
be
You chose it to do that. It is a different PUD. If you wanted it to be an extension of Hampton Walk, it should have been filed that way. It's a different PUD. That is what it is. It could be withdrawn and refiled as an extension of Hampton, I suppose. I'd have no objection to extending Hampton. And then you could put in all the same models there and just build more of them.
Yeah, and I think it's just a technicality. It could have been the same PUD. We discussed that with staff, and there were reasons to not do that. Only from an administrative point of view of cleaning up Hampton Walk by creating a separate PUD. So they have the same monument sign. They share amenities. You know, they share a playground. They share trails. They
No, they're
share
different
roadway.
They're different PUDs.
Okay.
I don't care what they share. They're different PUDs.
To push back a little, Dr. Burney, I understand that they're different PUDs, and that's why I'm trying to understand what those differences are in the PUDs, but at the same time, as the average consumer and citizen, I think they're going to be lumped together from a buyer's perspective. So I'm hearing you and being really technical about the PUD, so I think maybe having Mindy walk through some of these examples. But honestly, candidly, I just need to understand what the differences are between the PUDs, and that's on me to just review them more closely.
So we do have a comparison here.
Yeah,
on
I
the
can.
agenda.
Quick, so
That might
there
be-
are, to bring in a couple more floor plans, there are some small deviations. We have like 2 or 3, I don't have that sheet, the models. So when we looked to do this, we reduced the minimum square footage because it brings in 1 or 2 models per sub area. So this minimum square footage is really the same, but for 1 or 2 models that we need to bring in at a lower square footage, and so we make that the base. So on Maple Street, the minimum square footage brings in the Beacon plans, the Danville, and the Wesley plans. On sub-area B, and staff's determined 2 of these are substantial and 2 of them are not substantial. So sub-area B brings in the Amelia plan. Sub-area C brings in the Calvin plans, and sub-area B or D brings in the Grayson plans. And so that's the reason for that change. Same thing with the roof pitch. So most of them are 612, but there's a couple designs that are 512, and so only on 1-story products. And so again, that's the reason for the change. It's not all the elevations that were in Hampton Walk still apply here. Those roof pitches are the same, and so it's just that's the reason for the differences, to bring in a few more plans to help with anti-monotony, which we believe is really important for the neighborhood and for the math of selling homes and picking homes and for staff review and all of those type of things.
Thank you for this comparison. This is helpful.
Yeah, Fisher Homes enforces the side load garages based on the lot specific, so that's, you know, something that differs, but is still it's just a sort of a technicality, right? It's not in the PUD the same way it was in the Hampton Walk. So really you can see very minimum changes to the PUDs, and all have rationale behind why they were changed.
Yeah, I would add that I think if you're worried about something not meeting a standard, I think anything that's built in Hampton Walk is going to meet the Lane Farms as proposed standards. I think the question is just, do you want to revisit what's been previously approved in Hampton Walk, or do you want to move on to the new stuff? That's really the question.
I think we should consider it as its own PUD. It's not Rockport, it's not Vintners, it's not Colonnade, it's not Hampton Walk, it's Lane. It's a different ordinance, and the standards, as you just highlighted, are different. We should consider it on its own merits. Because it's been approved someplace else in town, doesn't mean it's approved here automatically. She's trying to argue for an automatic approval because they already got approved with the same landowner someplace else. It doesn't carry that way. If it's a town standard that's approved in subdivision A, then developer C could come in and say, well, it's approved in ours because it's approved over there. I mean, it doesn't work that way, I don't think.
We can just start the presentation. So if we go to slide 39, so we have on slide 39, it shows the elevations for sub-area C that we're requesting approval for tonight, and those are ones that have been previously approved. Those are shown on slides 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46 for your review. And then I would draw your attention to slides 46 or 47 through 75 for additional elevations that have not previously been approved for Hampton Walk for your review tonight. And that's, those are all the elevations for sub-area C.
I'm going to just scroll here slowly. Just tell me if you want me to stop. .46 the new ones? These are the new ones.
And then 17 of the new ones in that start on page 47 through 75, 17 of those were just approved with agenda item B. So you just reviewed them and they're identical.
So that would take out some of the Carrington.
That one Carrington would come out, yeah. That is all of them. Staff had no specific notes on any of the designer series homes.
I think they look good.
They all look great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I move that we approve as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that would be without a requirement for a front porch or with a requirement for a front porch?
They're fine the way they are.
With the cover entry
Yeah.
as well.
So the way they look, we're approving that, I think.
Do all of them have a covered entry without going through these?
I have, hold on one second.
I think the only,
This one here, right, might be,
It's got,
it has it's covered.
it's covered, yeah.
what about the Magnolia?
The French Manor. If you scroll back
Which one
to
that is
the
covered?
slides, you'll get to the French Manor.
This one.
Emmett American Classic with brick.
That one.
It's covered, right there? What was the other, the Emmett, what was that?
Emmett American Classic with brick.
I wrote that one too.
I think that's covered too.
Classic.
It's inset right there, right? That's an inset.
Yeah, it does have, yeah,
So we could say without a front porch, but with a covered entry. Sounds like we're okay with that. Are you guys comfortable with that?
as presented, yeah.
Is it, I think these all would be, I think the key is, you know, we're gonna write the PUD this way. And so as you move forward with new versions, there gotta be some sort of cover over them. Okay, area A, right?
Okay, so we can start on slide 4 for this one. Slide 4 shows you sub-area A, Maple Street collection product, the same product that's in Hampton Walk. These are the previously approved elevations, which are shown on pages 4 and 5. And then page 6 starts all of the new elevations
6 through 38 probably.
through, yep, 38.
I'm gonna start scrolling. Please stop me if you like.
It's Cumberland. Do you consider that covered?
You're asking about Cumberland?
Mhm.
I know, as I'm scrolling, I know one of our concerns was some of these didn't appear to meet the wall plane articulation requirement of 2 feet. Did you have a proposal for how to address that?
Right, that's correct.
Like that
In
one doesn't
reviewing
have it.
minutes from last time, one of the caveats I think that the board had come up with for the Cumberland, like specifically, if you go back to the beginning of those elevations, we start with, again, we did not submit any that had all siding where we would add a brick wainscot, as Mindy mentioned. We only submitted elevations that had mainly masonry on the front. So this is where we would start in our Maple Street series, where there's no porch, but based on conversation, reviewing conversation from the board last time, if there was a porch that projects a lot of times 6 feet, and so in different scenarios, it actually looks like a 2-foot extension, and that was why the board recommended some to move forward. If you move through this slide, the Cumberland's a great example of that. While there's not on the foundation plane a 2-foot articulation, there are different styles of porches, kind of meets the porch again. That intent, here's another one with a different gable style, with a different gable porch. And then you have a gable and an extended porch. So there could be some argument there for that. Same here with the urban modern. This is just an architectural style that seems to fit with that. So for whatever it's worth, that is what we
And so
talked
staff
about.
progressed with approving, Hampton Walk was done a little bit different than we've done PUDs, and one of the facets of it that's different is that anything that was shown at the pre-stages of the process with Hampton Walk was an approved elevation regardless. And so elevations like this would have gotten approved and went through and got built. I don't think we have any other PUD quite like that. So in every other PUD in town, you have to have a real 2-foot offset in the wall plane. And so if you like these, then we just need to incorporate that language into this PUD. If you don't like that, then we will stick with our normal approach of having an actual 2-foot break in the wall plane of the structure.
Well, like with that one up there, is that flat all the way across?
Yes.
Or are the upper levels
That is-
offset over the
That is
garage
one
there?
wall plane.
That's all flat? It's a little hard to tell.
It looks like many of these are flat. Do you know how many don't meet that 2-foot articulation budget? I mean, we can continue to walk through them, but it seems like several don't, and so that's ultimately.
Yeah, it's really what's.
But I see this style. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate the question and the discussion. It's really 3 plans where there's not a quote, what we call a step in the actual foundation plane, and it's the Beacon, the Cumberland, which is the one you're looking at. And Ryan, if you want to scroll back one more time again, There's different porch treatments that you may argue look better than some that do or don't have that. But it's the Beacon, the Cumberland, and then again, I'd want to note the #1 best-selling Maple Street plan in every market across the country is the Jensen, with different porch options again on that one. So
Which is the #1 seller?
the Jensen.
And that's flat all across the front.
Correct, that's what I was mentioning, that it doesn't have the foundation articulation, but with the different elevations and porch options and gables,
The porches do
Is the
make a
Jensen a
difference.
really efficient cost per square foot for buyers?
it's really the style, it's really the livability of the plan and.
The floor plan.
There's ones that are more so, Ryan, but the Jensen is really, like, we model this, it's just been a very popular plan in
Can you-
every market.
Can you go back to the Cumberland, Ryan? That. So,
I think it's just that
go
Cumberland
forward,
American
that
Classic.
one.
That one.
Go- No, the one before that.
Yeah,
That one.
this one.
That looks like there's a shadow between the brick and the siding that denotes an articulation. Same on the roof. That has no foundation articulation,
Correct.
and it's flat. So the shadow is like artist rendering.
Or it could be the brick, just the brick coming forward.
Like
et
4
cetera.
inches of brick or something.
So it's just a step off by the brick.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not
So you
actually,
see the change
it's not
in the
actually a
roof
2-foot.
line. You see the change in the roof as well, so it gives it,
Mhm.
it gives it
Some
that
dimension.
Yeah, the
dimension.
different heights of the roof almost makes it look articulated.
Correct,
And plus, the eyebrow over the garage,
right.
separate from the covered stoop, kind of gives the same impression. And the porches on some of the others do make it look articulated. And it's a little bit like looking at a 50s building that's brick and flat that is reminiscent of a factory building. And nowadays, they don't build commercial like that. They step them out every, 40 feet or so, and sometimes 2.5 feet, whatever, and it makes the buildings look, I think, more modern and attractive. But I think you've kind of done it here with the other features. That's just me talking.
Well, I think, staff's opinion is this is probably why we've had such a reaction to the Maple Street series, is that other than the porch features, they are very flat. Just in general, quite a few of the elevations. Even the ones that may meet the 2-foot projection, it's generally just the garage that projects the 2 feet, and the rest of the home is in one plane.
So when you say reaction, can you elaborate?
Well, I think we obviously had a pretty strong reaction in May when this came through, right?
Okay.
There was lots of discussion. Staff continued to talk about it with the petitioner. That was one of our assessments was, even like the Danville here, which meets the 2-foot break requirement, it's this garage that projects out the 2 feet. The rest of this facade is all in one
Well, I think
plane.
Tom Strayer in particular, who is an architect, had some concerns about the flatness of the front facade.
Yep.
I think he's primarily the one that pointed that out to us. But he's not here tonight to explain that further. To me, with the, like, both of those, with the features, they don't look flat to me.
And I agree, and I think the reason we bring this up or point this out is because it's not a one size fits all, unfortunately, with the 2-foot bump. As Ryan said, some of the plans that meet it, you just may not like the elevation, and vice versa. Some elevations that are flat front and have different porch configurations, or we've changed the roof line, or we've done it fits that kind of federal, the first Cumberland we were looking at, the federal style that used to be, just rampant everywhere in the country. That's why it's called American Classic. So there are true architectural styles at play here too. The urban modern, believe it or not, we have some buyers that can only build in Hampton Walk because they can get that urban modern elevation. And so it's just really a toss-up, and where I would just ask that the board really look at every house and elevation on its own accord and
Well, that's the
approve
essence
that.
of this. Brian writes PUDs, talks to you guys, and puts it in black and white. And then the architect gets it, and architecture's like the mother of all arts. And they design what looks good to them without necessarily meeting every standard. And then we get asked, well, it says it's got to articulate 2 feet, but it doesn't. Does it look okay? And
Yeah.
I see my goal is to try to make McCordsville a good-looking town. And to
We
the
do too.
extent we're successful jointly with that, you'll do well financially.
So again, I think we're at 2 issues. We have the porch issue and we have the 2-foot wall frame break. I will say staff feels very strongly all homes should have the 2-foot wall frame break. That is a McCordsville standard. It always has been a McCordsville standard since before any of this staff was here. But this is ultimately your recommendation to the Plan Commission. The PUD currently includes the 2-foot break requirement. It's very much about how we interpret that 2-foot break. If it is a wall plane break, at least 3 of the models do not meet the requirement, and they would just simply not be permitted in the future when it goes through its permitting process.
That's only 3 models
3 models.
and 5 floor plans per model, 4.
Varying number,
Yeah,
varying
yeah.
elevations per floor plan.
How many are we left with then? Those are thrown out.
We could lose up to 25 elevations, I believe.
So you'd have 25 left?
No, if we eliminate the Cumberland, the Jensen, and the Beacon, that's a total of 12 of the 42 that we have submitted.
That takes you to 30?
Unique elevations, that's
And
correct.
how many lots are there in this section?
50 plus. Or excuse me, 61. Or 61. Again, you're eliminating the best-selling plan,
Which is the Jensen.
which is the Jensen, that's correct.
And that doesn't have 2-foot articulation.
It doesn't.
It just looks like the window on the left is set way back.
And if you look at other elevations of it with like a 6-foot porch or, different things, it gives it that articulation.
Does it put you in an inspection bind if we waive it for homes that we think look all right?
Yeah, that's very difficult for us
That's
to
the problem.
administer. Yeah.
So they either gotta have 2-foot articulations or not.
Now, you could,
They're too flat.
you could direct us to write it in a way that a porch counts as the articulation point. I wouldn't say that means, that's not really a porch, but for instance, that one is a porch. It has
That's a
porch columns.
And that, doesn't look flat because of the porch.
The whole second floor is all flat, though. It still looks flat.
It's still
really
flat.
In looking at the Cumberland, there are some that look good. However, there are some that do look really flat. And I think I've been trying to aim for consistency. And I do think we just in the previous meeting, I know different builder, we talked a lot about the 2-foot articulation and why that matters to us. So, like, while some of these look good, I do think being consistent in that 2-foot articulation is important because I look at like Cumberland Urban Modern with brick and I just think it looks flat and it doesn't fit the overall character and quality in that Cumberland as well that you were just on. It doesn't jive with what a lot of the discussion we had last week. So I want to be mindful of, some of these look good, but really when we're talking about consistency, not meeting that 2-foot articulation, I think could be an issue for me, especially looking at the Cumberland homes. But I'm just one voice on the committee.
I agree with that. You said it better than
Trying.
I was trying to get the words out.
I think it's important to uphold longstanding standards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about Ryan's recommendation about, unless it
Not a
has-
recommendation, an option.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
What about
with-
Ryan's option of?
With the porch counting
with-
as articulation?
Yeah, it has a 2-foot articulation or a front porch, because I think what I'm hearing, that the board likes ones that, although they may not have the front articulation, like the ones that have,
Well, I think it might
Porches.
be just me, I don't know.
That's not consistent either with what we've done in the past. I would say it's better than nothing, but in the past, a wall plane break is an actual wall plane break.
And how long has that been the standard?
Since before I was here,
Since
so
2010?
plus 12 years.
It's kind of longer than the cornered brick wrap.
A lot longer.
So they can come. It still gives them a lot of options if those are eliminated.
Yeah, they still have 30 elevations, and they can
Right.
always introduce more in the
But
future.
I think it's important to support staff, and I think it's important to maintain long-standing standards, because other people building had to comply with them. I mean, at some point, what's fair is fair. Even if they look great, obviating the standard, I think a long-standing standard should probably stand.
I agree. I think, to your point, Ryan, I think I'm just fearful of a meeting in the future where we see that they're not meeting this
Oh, yeah.
long-standing standard.
That's how it works. Yeah,
and-
somebody else will ask next.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think for the sake of consistency, I wouldn't recommend moving forward with that exception. I think we keep the 2-foot articulation, and then they have the option to bring. I know we're going to cut some of their proposals, but I think they can move forward with different elevations, or like if they have in the future, right?
Is there support to approve contingent upon not having a front porch, but having covered entry and the 2-foot wall plane break for the whole allotment?
They need to have covered entry and a 2-foot wall plane break.
Yep. Petitioner obviously should jump in and tell us if that's working
this
for
is
them.
all, it's really damaging to the sub area, I'll be honest with you.
Well, when these
Because
were-
we're losing full
When the
plans.
discussions went on with what was going to be in the PUD, was a 2-foot articulation a surprise to you guys? That it's in there?
But I think this goes to your point of that these are two separate PUDs. And
They are
so
two separate.
we have to.
And it's in Hampton Walk, right, too?
Yeah.
All Hampton Walk has 2-foot articulations.
Can we look at the other elevations, Ryan, and
Sure.
just, obviously, those are the 3 plans. Again, we won't come back with new elevations for these 3 plans. This is a plan specific, because it's in the foundation again. So they just will not be offered, so we'll lose a total, would you say 16?
No, 14.
14
So
elevations
14
of the 42 that we, so 20%, 25%, 20%.
And then we lose an additional 2 that don't have a covered entry.
That were approved. So if we can just start at the beginning then, Ryan, if you want to walk through those.
Start from the very beginning?
I think it's on slide 4.
It's necessary if we just.
So the beacon's gone.
Well, what's your depth? What's your recessed front door depth?
It's not 2 feet. If you go the next beacon, same thing. That is 1 wall plane.
So 2 beacons.
It'd be 3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 3 beacons, 5 Cumberlands, and 6 Jensens.
There was a beacon that was already approved in Hampton Walk.
The modern farmhouse with brick.
We've seen the Cumberland enough.
But so then Beacon, Cumberland, Jensen. Well, I'm just not comfortable setting a precedent, like undoing a precedent that has been in place. Like, I'm sympathetic to losing elevations and what that does, but there are other options that look great.
We'd be losing a plan, I'm gonna be clear.
A plan, yes, yeah, a plan, not just a single elevation.
This is a new one.
That would be one that would get lost because it doesn't have any kind of covered entry there.
So where are we with this PUD? Has it been written yet?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is the PUD written already?
It is drafted.
It's drafted, but it's not.
Yep, going to Plan Commission tonight, so they are seeking a recommendation tonight. And the PUD is drafted with the 2-foot requirement in it.
Okay.
That's all.
And just curious, is you guys were aware or not aware of the 2-foot articulation when these plans were being made, or their plans from elsewhere that were pre-existing and
Yeah.
roll over to here?
Exactly. So again, as I started, or as I commented at the beginning, the previous board on Hampton Walk, even though there's the commitment of the 2-foot step, there were elevations that were approved by the board because it had a porch, or they felt as though it was aesthetically pleasing, went ahead and approved those. Part of the reason too why we asked for a lot of the elevations, just to be approved tonight, but you've seen them all now, so I just want to be, the last board, we did do that.
Yeah, and so procedurally, we found that to be problematic for us, to have a set of elevations that were approved that don't have to meet the black and white text. Anything new has to meet it. And that's one of the reasons why we suggested a new PUD. There's a few other tweaks and changes, like the 24-inch corner wraps, and the fact that we have changes to lot sizes and roof pitch that made it seem like this was better for its own PUD, but we are trying to mimic the original PUD. I would agree with that. But if you can think of, we do 400 permits a year, and we do a review of every single one for every single architectural standard in this list and every single PUD, which are all a little bit different, and then to add to that layer, here's some elevations that don't have to meet the requirements. It is really difficult on our inspection staff to do that review and not make mistakes. We're setting ourselves up for failure.
So
This is the
since the PUD is not yet approved, what's the consequence of removing the 2-foot articulation requirement from the PUD at this stage, if that was done at the Plan Commission tonight?
That can be done tonight.
Yeah, we'd be supportive of that. I mean, because, or with the addition of a porch or whatnot. I mean, I think that's the beauty of a PUD, right? It's, you're essentially writing your own zoning requirements and architecture requirements. And so we're happy to continue to work with staff on getting this right.
Yeah, it's separate from the zoning ordinance.
And to be clear, that would be your recommendation to the Plan Commission.
But
The Plan Commission may disagree.
It's not a done deal yet.
Correct. Oh, no, we've
So
got.
we could recommend to the Plan Commission that the elevations that the committee thinks are appropriate be approved, and that the PUD not include a 24-inch articulation.
Good.
Which would make uniform for staffing, and it's not an ordinance that we're running over, it's one that's being developed.
It is. Just note that the next developer that walks in the door is going to want the same thing.
And we kind of made a point with our special meeting about that articulation. Emphasizing that articulation.
I think my recommendation is to only approve the plans in the movable street collection that meet the 2-foot. That, just because for future Jenna and future meetings for that conversation. And because it's,
There will be many more developers,
yeah.
and everyone will point to what's been done before. I mean, you do read the minutes and look at what's been done. Consistency is hard to argue with, but variations.
True, and that's the role.
Many hoops you can start trying to jump through, and we're left with the town, and the developer moves to the next one.
So keep the 2-foot articulation, but be okay with the covered entry.
So a covered entry and 2-foot articulation is required. Models that don't meet it are not approved.
That's, so if that's your motion, I'll.
And you're making a recommendation?
A recommendation.
We're making a recommendation to Plan Commission, which is to follow in 20 minutes.
Yep. Is there
A second? Or a motion for the recommendation?
The motion is to recommend to the Plan Commission the models be approved as submitted, except for the ones that don't have a covered entry and/or don't have a 2-foot articulation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
just to be clear, you said and/or, you meant and.
And.
Okay.
And if they lack either one.
Do you guys have any questions on that?
Yeah, could you repeat what was?
Yeah, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard, and it's good for me to repeat this because I get to administer this.
I did say and/or.
You meant and, though?
Well, if they don't have.
If they don't have either one.
So we're getting
I mean,
another layer.
if they don't have a covered porch or a covered entry
2-foot.
or a 2-foot articulation, either one lacking.
Either one bumps it out, yeah. So I would rephrase it as the elevations in Area A were approved with the recommendation to the Plan Commission that the PUD include the 2-foot wall plane break requirement, not include porch requirement, but do include a covered entry.
Yes.
So we would lose the
You lose the 14.
14.
Yep.
Is there a way, Mark sent you additional, I mean, that's a lot of elevations that are kind of additional plans. Mark sent you a presentation with additional elevations.
When did he send it?
When you first filed, is there a way to bring in like the additional green briars?
I don't know that we can do that now, but we could do that next month. We could always, you could seek to add them after the rezone. I don't know that it's fair to the petitioner that's still here to pull something up now. You know what I mean? It wasn't part of the packet that we all finalized on Friday and that the board had all weekend to review.
Okay, we'll work with you on figuring out what elevations were removed and getting them back
And-
before the airs.
And I would remember, think of it this way. If there are elevations like the Greenbrier that you want to bring in later, if they meet the black and white text and they're within the character and quality of these, they're going to be approved.
And they don't need to come back to ARC, right? Because staff can approve that.
Everything comes back to ARC at the end after the rezone process is over. Okay, thank you. In power, come on up, Tim, or whoever is speaking. We're going to try to do this within 10 minutes.
Got it. And actually, I don't know, but will be easiest to show you materials.
Yes, could you just take those up to the board there? Thank you, Jenna. Yep. Feel free to jump on in, anybody. Yeah, we're pretty informal here, as you've seen. So as those are being passed out, let me just maybe briefly introduce this. This is for a lack of a better term, a light industrial building. The front portion of the building is like an office space. and the back portion is more of a warehousing, true industrial space. A lot of interesting materials being proposed today, and I will turn it over to the petitioner.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Cannon. I'm with Architects Forum. InPower is a national company. They do work all over the country, so it's very exciting that they're making their new headquarters in McCordsville. They use that airport quite frequently, so they're very excited. I think what I'm explaining today is the exterior material
Yes.
of the building. It is a Class A office building. So while this is an industrial new PUD, we definitely needed it to look modern, and we needed that wow factor. So the office itself has a lot of upgraded materials. So we're using a very modern ACM panel on the sides of the building. That would be one of the silver metallics that you see.
And
Some of our-
ACM is a metal panel, correct?
Yes, so the silver one would be, yes, that one that you have. And then these two would be accents. The white canopy, we have a balcony on the front. That would be the white. And then to soften that pedestrian approach to the building, we wanted to give a wood. So we're using a very cool product. It's called longboard. It's made from aluminum, printed wood. It looks incredible. And I can show you an example of that. So we put that not only on the front of the building, but on the back of the building as well. One more slide. Thank you. So you can really see we've tried to wrap, and then we have a balcony on the second level that would have a lot of the longboard there. This rendering doesn't show it very well, but we're wanting to put a lot more landscaping in this area, so that this is the social break room, so that that area can spill outside. I mean, we've even talked about, maybe a fire pit or something, but we'll be submitting all of that separately for landscaping. Really want to get a good mix and kind of offer some privacy even for the building. And if you do go back one slide, this is a pretty long, expansive building. So we wanted to do something to give interest and break up the length. There's a lot of glass, and we didn't want it to look like just boring ribbon windows. So we've added the vertical elements. We have laser cut metal panels to give just, again, some detail to the building and really give it that elevated look. So the colors that we've used there are just a very sophisticated, the metallics. And so again, we have the silver, we have the darker color, some of the white, and then copper. So subtle, but again, really gives a sophisticated look to the building. And then storefront for all of our windows, I believe we're using a combination of black and silver. Yeah, and I left my silver sampled over there. But so again, these are not the insulated panels that would be for the warehouse portion. These are a much nicer Centria panel. And if I can show you an example, we just did the Lucas headquarters building at Keystone of the Crossing, and it's a very similar architecture. So these are those panels used in this, and we would have a very similar look to that. You can see the longboard is on that building. This is an actual photo.
So that's built.
Yes, correct.
That's
So this is
Lucas.
the feature that we would have, on the two ends of the building. And then this is the longboard that we would be using. And yes, this is built at Keystone.
That copper color, the same color as here.
It is.
How shiny is that in real life?
It's not reflective.
Good.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect. And it's not real, so it won't get that green patina. Yeah, it's really very modern, very sharp. But we think it still fits well into this industrial area because it does have clean lines and forms and a lot of natural light for the employees, which was very important, of course. Any other questions that I can answer?
Could you maybe talk through these materials, where they're going?
Sure.
All that good stuff?
And it's hard because these are definitely not the colors.
Oh, they're not? Okay.
Yeah, these are just an example of, because it is, well, the texture, but also just the insulation, because that portion of the building is not conditioned.
Okay.
So,
That's the back portion.
yeah, the warehouse. So this would be
Do this elevation, the other one.
also in the darker color, which we think is more sophisticated than, we don't want to see a big white building, a big white box. So we are doing that. And then we've added some accent panels in the silver to relate to the other part of the building, as well as blue. And you'll see we've tried to be a bit playful with our placement of that, and also the windows kind of moving up and down. So that again, this long expansive building doesn't look like a long, boring flat facade.
What's maybe the difference, you can explain to us the difference between like this material, especially the one with your hands on there, and just your standing vertical seam metal siding? Like, what's the difference between that and?
Well, again, because it will be the insulated panel, this is just showing the form. So this larger rib kind of adds to that modern look again.
Okay.
And, I mean, we've seen this used a lot lately on bourbon barrel buildings. And in that darker color, it's rich. It's
Is that
really-
steel?
Yeah, really nice. So a heavier gauge, I guess.
And the wood grain's extruded aluminum?
I'm sorry,
The wood grain is extruded aluminum?
it is,
Is it concealed fasteners everywhere?
100%.
Okay. And then,
Absolutely, we don't want to see those.
yes, going back to that, so when you're explaining that, metal seam is individual metal pieces that are hooked together. This is much larger scale panels, correct?
Exactly, yeah, it's not just a strip, it would be truly a wide panel.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to tell there. Kyle, how wide are these?
3 feet.
3 feet? Okay, so it's a 3-foot panel.
Okay.
Can you go with the office rendering?
Back to it?
The renderings?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just want to make sure. Make sure we have what's ACM. What's
Yes, so the ACM panel would be these large, and on the other side with the other metallics that we looked at. We really see this part of the building as a connector between the two, between the warehouse and the office.
And is that this material on the shelf?
No, it's mostly all glass here.
I mean above it.
Oh,
there.
Kyle, is that?
That's the.
That is that one.
Where are your mechanicals?
They are hidden. They are in this portion of the
So there's a
building,
flat roof right
in the
there.
very
Screen
center.
to the side.
And
Is
then
there
we
like a
have a
parapet and
screen.
they're on the rooftop behind it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So the warehouse screens are on one side, and the office on the other. Everybody got a screen wall.
Yeah, we
with
have a
sight lines, you really
Yeah, I
can't
think
see them.
you do have a plan.
I think you're right. I know Tim gave it to me. The question is, where do I put it? Tim, do you help me out? Am I missing it? Is it down here further?
It's okay, I can show from the site plan.
That's it right there, isn't it? This is it?
Um,
Oh, up here? Yeah, it's that screen right there. Right here.
Yeah,
Oh, right there.
so we have a screen.
Screen's in there.
But
Gotcha.
if you can go to the plan, I'll kind of show you. Okay, so it's hidden, it's right
You know,
here.
we just have sightline specifications that you can't see at a certain angle. Looks like the roof's screened.
So it's completely hidden on these two sides, and then we have a screen on the north and the south.
The way it's been described to me, I felt pretty confident that they were hitting our sightline requirements.
So with these materials, Ryan, these are not our traditional materials that we see. They're kind of new and innovative. We have to approve them because they're metal, right?
Correct. So metal is allowed in this particular PUD. It gives you the right to approve those, any kind of architectural metal panel. if the style of the building warrants it. So you just need to make that determination, assuming that is the case, that you believe the style of this building warrants the use of these metal panels.
This is a building that is part of the PUD example.
Mhm.
So this
Yeah,
is
seen that one.
very consistent with
Right.
those. These are just an upgrade because again, we wanted a Class A building versus making it feel like it was the warehouse.
So we could just approve as submitted?
I believe that you can. Was it this the picture that was the metal one, your example?
Yeah.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and I think even the one below might be,
It looked concrete, but I wasn't sure.
oh yeah, you're right, it is
Yeah.
Lovely.
precast.
And
Yeah, we didn't
that-
want to use precast because it would limit the number of windows that we could have in the office, and we really wanted to have a lot of natural light.
One of the things that made staff comfortable was that specific picture that she just showed you.
Yeah, it's consistent.
The top half, 2/3 of that building is a metal panel. So I think you need to make the determination that the building style warrants the metal panel, but it was very key for us to say that, hey, one of the pictures in the illustrative character exhibit was metal panel like this.
Well, the things we have in our zoning ordinance are aimed more at the barn roofing products with the exposed fasteners, et cetera. Although we do approve standing seam metal roofs separately
Right.
when they're architecturally appropriate. And this just, all fits together beautifully. And the material seems substantial and not highly reflective and should last, well, forever.
I think they're warranted, don't they?
Perfectly said.
So I move we approve as submitted, and specifically that we approve of the wide variety of metal clad and metal composed exterior construction materials.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Look at that, 3 minutes to go.
I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for your time.
All right, next meeting is August 19th. One quick note, we are in process on that change in our PUD rezone process that we discussed last month. It's actually on Plan Commission tonight. And if it gets a recommendation tonight, it'll be on the August Town Council meeting for final action. So we are a month or two away from that process being in place and moving forward with you guys kind of going back to your traditional roles. So that's all I have.
you.